What caused the Navy A-6E intruder to slam into the cliff? We have a live satellite report from the scene. Plus a live report from Whidbey Island Naval Air Station, home to the intruder that crashed. We'll look at the A-6 safety record.
Our top story begins tonight just southeast of Wenatchee, where the search continues at this hour for the second crewman aboard the military jet that crashed.
King 5's Glenn Farley joins us live by satellite with the latest. Glenn?
Well, Gene and Barry, this crash happened about 10:15 this morning. There were actually two A-6s that were flying alongside the river as part of a regular training mission. But in this case, the regular training mission for two pilots turned out to be a fatal one. The Douglas County Sheriff says one wing of the A-6 clipped the side of this cliff while making low-flying maneuvers down the Columbia River. For a distance of approximately 3 miles, debris was scattered. Portions of the plane could be found along the banks of the Columbia. But most of the debris is underwater, including the fuselage. Some things not underwater: the body of one of the plane's pilots, portions of an ejector seat, parachute, and 2 helmets.
There were 2 eyewitnesses that were higher up that saw the 2 aircraft flying upstream up the Columbia River. They made a turn, and as they were making the turn, apparently the one that crashed, his wing contacted the rock cliff, which caused the aircraft to roll over right directly into the river.
Ralph Curtis says he never saw the actual crash, but he heard it from more than a mile away.
Well, first we thought maybe it might have been a dynamite blast, but it was enough to shake the apartment here.
It was that strong.
It was that strong. And then a big cloud of black smoke and whatnot going rising right straight up.
You can actually still see some fuel down on the Columbia River right now left over. The current is not running very quickly. By the way, the sheriff said the people did not actually see the plane hit the cliff, but they found markings, fresh scraping marks on the side of that cliff. Back to you, Gene and Bill.
Glenn, do they have any idea where the second crew member may be? How thorough has that search been?
Navy investigators are due here any time. Navy rescue crews were out here earlier. They think that second crew member is probably still with the fuselage in about 100 feet of water.
All right, Glenn Farley, live near Wenatchee. Well, in the past 10 years, there have been about a dozen crashes involving A-6s from Whidbey Island Naval Air Station.
Our top story continues now with King 5's John Sandifer, who joins us live from Whidbey Island with a look at the intruder safety record. John.
And the Navy has confirmed here at the Whidbey Island Naval Station that it was one of their aircraft that crashed in eastern Washington today. The announcement this afternoon was typically terse and to the point.
The intruder from NAS Whidbey Island crashed today at approximately 11:15 a.m. local time southeast of Wenatchee during a routine training mission. The cause of the crash is undetermined and will be investigated by the Navy. Status of the 2 crew members is unknown. Names of the crew will be withheld pending notification of next of kin.
Many of the crashes involving Whidbey Island warplanes have been during low-level training missions, and there have been a lot of them in the last 10 years. Navy records indicate 35 crashes with 37 flyers killed. There have been investigations by the Navy and by Congress into the accident rate of the A-6 and the EA-6B aircraft, especially after wing cracks were discovered in 1987. But investigators reported they found, quote, no common cause or pattern to the crashes. Pilot error was listed as the cause of 3 of the most recent 6 crashes. A separate investigation was conducted on pilot training with the result that no flaws were found in the training program. It goes almost without saying that this is dangerous flying. The aircraft and the training is designed to approach an enemy target at low level to avoid enemy radar and to take bombing runs at almost treetop level. And the training missions are what the name implies, the opportunities for new pilots to train in some seat-of-the-pants kinds of flying situations and to push their personal threshold, sometimes beyond the point of no return. At the Naval Air Station, I'm John Sandifer, King 5 News.
Yeah, useful perspective. John Sandifer, live at Whidbey Island.
The bottom line tonight: the Whidbey Island-based A-6 jet crashes into a cliff along the Columbia River just southeast of Wenatchee. One of the 2 crew members on board was killed. The search is continuing for the second aviator. Witnesses say that there were no parachutes or any other signs of a survivor. The plane was on a low-level training mission at the time. Most of the wreckage fell into the Columbia River. The cause of the crash still under investigation tonight.
Another plane crash and a dramatic rescue in this one on Lake Washington this morning. The two men aboard escaped with just cuts and bruises. The plane went down during a flight lesson at Renton Airport. Unluckily for Jim Young and his student, Richard West, a couple of water skiers were just 150 feet away.
I thought they were making a bypass. They were coming in for landing because it was turning, and they were low. The next thing I know, I looked up, and it was a splash. And I couldn't believe it, you know. I thought, we said that's not a float plane, so we just sped over there. And we thought, they aren't coming up. We didn't see them, so we went as fast as I could around to the side of the other side of the wing. And then one guy popped up, and I was just ready to jump in to go in the fuselage, and the other guy popped up.
The planes came to take up the search. They had to go back, presumably back to Whidbey Island.
Rick Price from near Wenatchee, thank you.
A small plane plunged into Lake Washington today, too. The single-engine Piper Cherokee crashed into the water near the end of the Renton Airport runway. A flying teacher and his student were practicing touch-and-go landings when the engine sputtered, then quit. Two water skiers watched the plane go down and rushed to the rescue. Both men were pulled off the plane to safety. They were not seriously hurt and had just been released.
And his instructor are alive tonight, thanks to some alert and swift water skiers who happened to be in the right place at the right time. Late this morning, a small plane went down into Lake Washington as it came in for an approach to the Renton Airport. The plane went in a couple of hundred yards from shore, but luckily only a short distance from some skiers out on a boat.
The engine kind of fluttered a little bit, and they come down right beside us. And we pulled in around on the backside of the boat. The plane was going under, and picked the two fellas up. They both got out of the plane on their own.
25-year-old James Young of Renton and 26-year-old Richard West of Kirkland sustained only minor injuries. No word yet on when the plane will be raised from the lake bottom. The National Transportation Safety Board will be investigating the cause of this crash.
The Columbia River. Cairo News reporter Melanie Grandforth now reports via satellite from Wenatchee.
It is a regular training flight pattern for A-6s from Whidbey Naval Air Station, low-level maneuvers along the Columbia River. Today, eyewitnesses saw two A-6s flying upstream along the river when one of them clipped the hillside and went cartwheeling in flames into the Columbia River.
When we arrived at the scene, there was some debris floating in the water, and the other A-6 plane was circling the area. It appears that the aircraft impacted in the water, and when it impacted, there was a fireball. None of the debris, however, was on the shore. All the debris was in the river floating downstream.
Search and rescue crews retrieved small parts of the plane and debris. Late this afternoon, Navy crash specialists from Whidbey Naval Air Station flew over the spot where the plane's fuselage is believed to be.
Navy officials have not decided how much longer they'll search these waters for the remains of the second crewman or when they'll retrieve the fuselage. Their investigation is expected to take several days. Near Wenatchee in Douglas County, Melanie Grandforth, Cairo News.
And one more plane crash here. Two civilian flyers crashed a single-engine plane in the south end of Lake Washington today. The Piper Cherokee went down in about 80 feet of water just off the runway at the Renton Airport. Witnesses say it sounded as if the Cherokee's engine stalled after takeoff. They say it looked as if the pilot was trying to turn back when the plane hit the water. Both pilot and passenger were rescued by men in a speedboat. The plane sank minutes later. The men on the plane, James Young and Richard West, are fine, suffering but minor injuries. The crew of a 58-foot fishing boat should be counting their blessings tonight, even though their boat capsized this afternoon. The good news is that capsized in just 27 feet of water, right in the middle of the ship canal near Ballard. Two crew members on board got away with no injuries, but the people who had to clean it all up were very worried about the diesel fuel on board. Booms were brought in right away to trap any fuel that might have leaked from the hull. The accident happened when a skiff on the ship shifted to one side, and that was enough to flip her over. Rescue crew said this could have been a real tragedy if it had happened out at sea, but it didn't.